So the Torah portion starts off this week. Vayakhel Moshe, and Moshe gathered as Kol Hadas Bnei Yisrael, the entirety of the Jewish people, all the Jewish people. He gathered them together. Vayomer Aleim, and he said to them, Eila hadvarim asher tziva Hashem la'asos osam. These are the things that Hashem has commanded us to do. Sheishes yomim te'aseh melacha. 6 days work shall be done. Uvayom hashvi'i yeh lachem kodesh, and on the seventh day it will be holy, sacred. Shabbos Shabbosoim laHashem, a day of rest for Hashem, etc. And then it continues. So there are a number of questions that we have that we're going to address here. And we're going to outline all the questions, and then we'll get to the answers, hopefully. So question number one, Yeshkan Kama Diyukim there. Yeshkan Diyukim Rabbim, there are a lot of things that we could point out and be particular about and raise query with, the kushas and questions, Shekama Mehem Sholim Gama Parsha Torah, that and a number of these queries are actually already raised by commentaries on the Torah. So Aleph, question number one, Ma Pirish HaMusag Vayakhel Moshe. Why does it say Vayakhel Moshe and Moshe gathered? Moshe spoke to the Jewish people on a very regular basis. The way that the Torah usually tells us about such an event is Vayomer Moshe, and Moshe told, and Moshe spoke, and Moshe said to the people, Moshe told the people. It doesn't usually tell us, and Moshe gathered the people together and he told them. Obviously, if he told them, he gathered them together to be able to tell them. He didn't send them a WhatsApp. So why is it that on this occasion the Torah doesn't feel that it's enough to just say, and Moshe told the Jewish people? It says, and he gathered them together and told them. So that's question number one. Question number two, base, hu omer, it says, Eila hadvarim asher tziv Hashem la'asos osam. So we read this out, and I'm going to continue here a little further just to clarify. We said, Moshe gathered the Jewish people, vayomer leim, he said to them, Eila hadvarim asher tziv Hashem la'asos osam. These are the things that Hashem commanded us to do. 6 days you shall work, on the seventh day it will be Shabbos, you shall not kindle a fire on Shabbos. And then those are the first three verses. Verse number 4 says, Vayomer Moshe al kol hadas bnei Yisrael, Lema Moshe said to the Jewish people, he spoke to the Jewish people, and said, this is that which Hashem has commanded you. And then he tells them about all the things that they have to bring to contribute towards the building of the Mishkan. So when it says, now the question is, Eila hadvarim, when it says these are the things that Hashem commanded you to do, what are the things that Hashem commanded? It says these are the things that Hashem commanded you to do. Now, we could really understand this to be two things, because there are two things we just talked about. One is Shabbos. The second thing is the things in the Mishkan, the materials that needed to be donated towards the building of the Mishkan. But neither of those make any sense. It can't be that either of those, that observance of Shabbos or donating to the Mishkan, is what it's talking about, and we'll see inside why. Most of the commentaries say that it's talking about the things that were donated to the Mishkan. Baram, however, this is difficult to accept. It's difficult. It says again, so I'm going to do this again. We start off, and Moshe gathered the Jewish people and said to them, these are the things Hashem commanded you. 6 days work shall be done. On the seventh day it will be Shabbos. You shall not kindle a fire. And Moshe spoke to the Jewish people and said, this is what Hashem has commanded. Take from among you, and then list the materials. So it says a second time, Moshe told the Jewish people, this is what Hashem commanded. So in verse number 1, we have, Moshe gathered the Jewish people and told them, this is what Hashem has commanded you to do. Then in verse number 4, it says, and Moshe told the Jewish people, this is what Hashem commanded you to do, and talks about the donations of the Mishkan. So what was the first thing that he's telling them that Hashem commanded them to do? It doesn't make sense, really, or it's difficult to accept that it's talking about the Mishkan, because why does it say twice? Moshe said to the Jewish people, this is what Hashem commanded you to do. Moshe said to the Jewish people, this is what Hashem commanded you to do, donate to the Mishkan. So what was the first thing talking about? So the second option is Shabbos. So then, maybe we are forced to say, we would now be inclined to understand that it's not talking about the donations to the Mishkan, because it says a second time that Moshe told the Jewish people, this is what Hashem commanded you. So what was the first thing that he told the Jewish people, that this is what Hashem commanded you? It seems like it's obvious, it's Shabbos. because that's what it talks about immediately following that. It says, Moshe gathered the Jewish people and told them, this is what Hashem has commanded you to do. Excuse me. And then he says, 6 days you shall work, and on the 7th day it'll be Shabbos, which kind of seems to make sense, except for the fact, the problem with this is, it's not understood. We've already been told to keep Shabbos. So what is the instruction here? You don't instruct someone to do something that you've already instructed them to do. You shouldn't have to. And in Torah, it definitely doesn't do that. Torah doesn't repeat instructions. And any time that Torah seems to be repeating itself, we break it down and ask, okay, so what's it telling us that we didn't already know last time? What's this instruction adding that wasn't included in the first instruction? Because Torah doesn't just repeat itself. There's nothing in Torah that's redundant. So what is the instruction here? Moshe spoke to the Jewish people, told them this is what Hashem instructed you. 6 days, work shall be done. 7th day will be Shabbos. Don't light a fire. We've been told all of that already. So that's question number 2. Question number 1 is, why does it say Vayakhel and he gathered? It just tell us he spoke to them. He gathered them to speak lots of times. The Torah doesn't tell us every time he gathered. Why does it tell us this time? Question number 2, what's the instruction here? When it says these are the things in verse number 1, this is what Hashem has instructed you, it's not talking about the Mishkan, because that phrase is repeated about the Mishkan. So that's not what this instruction is talking about. That's the next set of instructions. What is this set of instructions? It's not the Mishkan and it's not Shabbos, because we've already been instructed about Shabbos. Question number 3, Gimel, Madua nema Shabbos Shabbosan Pamayim in Yom Shabbos. Why does it say, and this is in verse number base, Pasuk base. 6 days work shall be done, and on the 7th day it will be holy to you. Shabbos Shabbosain. Just say Shabbos. Why Shabbos Shabbosain? Why is the word repeated? Daled. 4th question. Rashi says, Rashi explains, Vayakhel Moshe, when it says Moshe gathered the Jewish people, this incident happened on the day following Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur today is Yom Kippurim, it's the Day of Atonement, because that was the original day on which Hashem forgave the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf. Moshe came down from Har Sinai after begging Hashem to forgive the Jewish people for that sin of idolatry. And then this happened, he gathered the Jewish people together and told them this. If Rashi is telling us, by the way, this happened the day after Yom Kippur, and this is implied in the verses, obviously it's relevant. What's the relevance? It's not just incidental. Rashi wouldn't bother telling us something that's just incidental if it wasn't relevant. So what's the relevance of the fact that this incident was the day following Yom Kippur? That this was the day after Moshe came back from the mountain, and when Hashem had told him, Salachti kidvarecha, that I have forgiven the Jewish people as per your request. So what's the connection here? So now we have 4 questions outlined about the opening of this week's Parsha. We're now up to paragraph base. It's 8 lines in on the second column, page 168 in the Hebrew, and it is page 171 in the English, where you see the Roman numerals 2 towards the bottom of the page. Okay, so I'm going to point something out here about the way that this verse is worded, because when it says, it doesn't actually say 6 days you shall work. It says, and Moshe gathered the Jewish people and told them, this is what Hashem has commanded you. Sheishes yomim te'osem melacha. So let's start with the word this. Is there a better marker here? If not, I'll just use this one. No. Okay, this I'll have to do. It's fine. It'll do. Yeah, thank you. Sorry? Oh, okay. Thank you. So, asay. Yeah, no, it's not very good.
There's more on the other one.
Yeah, okay. So, she went to bring. I think Moshe went to bring. I think so, yeah. So, in Hebrew, there's a rule that the Hebrew language, I've said this many times, is exquisitely systematic and technical. So every word has a shoresh. There's a shoresh, which the word shoresh means root. So there's a root word. Thank you very much. So every word in Hebrew has a root word, which is arguably either always 3 letters or maybe sometimes 2 letters and sometimes 3 letters. And then you build upon the root of that word to get various variations of the word. And the degree to which this is technical and systematic is such that you can actually create words in Hebrew. If there's a word, or figure out what a word is, if there's something you want to say and you don't know what the word is, if you know what the shoresh, the root word is, and you know your way around the rules of grammar and the system and the way that words are built and prefixes and suffixes and tenses, etc., you could actually figure out what the word is, because there are technicalities to how you get from any given shoresh or root word to all the different variations of the word. So there's a shoresh here, a root word, 3 letters. Ayin, sin, hey. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you, Musi. And this means do. Asay is do. Asa is he did. Asa, asta, she did, etc. And all the variations of that word. So let's take this twice and look at 2 different variations. So this is the word that's in the Torah, in this verse. Tov ayin sin hey. Now, the word tov ayin sin hey, and when it comes to constructing a word, vowelization is very important, because you could have the same letters meaning very different things depending on the vowels. So generally, if you were to see this word, the natural assumption would probably be that the word is ta'aseh, you will do, because that's the most frequent use of this combination of letters. So ta'aseh means you will do. But that's not the vowelization that this word has in this week's Parsha. It's te-a-se. And the meaning's different. It's the same root word. It has to do with doing or action. But the word te-a-se means it will be done. It doesn't say 6 days you shall work. 6 days you shall do work. It says 6 days work shall be done. So here, Hadvarim Yuvnu, all of these questions will be resolved after and understood. La'achar haskaris divrei Hazal b'kashel l'diakaloshin te ase tof tzuruya. So the word te ase has a tsere under the tof. Te ase. It's not ta'ase. Tof tzuruya ayin kamutza te ase v'loi ta'ase tof. It's not a patach under the tof and the ayin, which will be ta'aseh, you will do or you shall do. It's it will be done. Ha'evdel hu pirish ta'aseh hu asiya b'miloi tzumas lev. You will do actively. You will actively do. Ve'ilu pirish ta'aseh b'tof tzuruya hu asiya shel derech agav. That means it will be done, which may imply the work happening on its own. And today, the contemporary equivalent would be labor versus something that's automated, for example. As things become more and more automated, there's less you do something and there's more the thing gets done. Now, it doesn't necessarily, and we're going to get into this in detail, it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's being done by a machine as opposed to a person. But even if a person is doing something, there are different ways of doing it. There are ways of doing it in which a person is completely invested and involved, which you would refer to as doing. Ta'aseh, you will do, you are doing. And then there's te'aseh, it will happen. And I'm sure everybody's had the experience when you do something, you say something, and you're not even sure how it happened. You end up somewhere and you're like, how did I even get here? Because you were spaced out, thinking about something else, whatever it is. You do something and you're not even sure how you did it. Or maybe you're not even sure, but you might not literally not be sure, but you didn't realize you were doing it, and all of a sudden you ended up in this place or having done this thing. So did you do it with your hands, with your feet, with your mouth? Yeah. But did you do it consciously, or did it just sort of happen? right? So in such an instance, you could say this just happened. Now, for just perhaps a visual sort of example, I remember as a kid once I was riding my bike, and there was this aggressive dog that lived not too far from my house. I think it got put down eventually. But one day I was riding past the house and the dog came running out of the out of the driveway and started chasing me. And it was like its mouth was right behind my heel and it was about to nip me. And I screamed out. But it was not a voluntary scream. There was no decision I'm going to scream. You know, you read in a book sometimes when it's dramatic, it's like I heard a scream and then I realized it was me. That's what happened. I literally heard the scream come out of my mouth and there was zero conscious or voluntary involvement. It literally just came out of my mouth. That would be a very extreme example of something happening. Te oseh. Did I scream? Technically, yes. But did I scream or did the scream happen to me? It's more like the scream happened to me than me having screamed. So that's the kind of thing we're talking here. We're going to get into it in more detail and clarify what we mean by that. So, and continuing on this theme of the work being done by itself, and we're here towards the bottom of the big paragraph in the middle of the left column on page 168. B'mechilta, in the Medrash Mechilta, b'mkoimei, on this pasuk, it says, Nemar kach, bizman she Yisroel oisin, when the Jewish people follow the will of God, we fulfill the will of the Creator. Malachton na'asis al yedei acherim. Their work is done by others. So we see here the implication of this word te aseh. It will be done as opposed to us doing it. So one of the ways that this is understood is that it's a blessing that when we do what we're supposed to do, the work gets done for us and we don't have to do it ourselves. Zu ha-bracha min hashamayim. This is a bracha that comes from above, a blessing from heaven. Baram, however, l'chol davar yesh gam b'chinas kfi shehu ba'avodas ha'adam. So there is also an equivalent. There's the zoomed out picture, which is between us and our environment. So when we do what we're supposed to do, the work gets done for us. But we could take this idea and apply the idea itself in a more concentrated and focused way, just within our own work, in a way that the whole thing is included within us, and it's not an interaction between us and our environment, but it's all within the individual. We're going to clarify what that means. So what does it mean that the work will be done as it refers to my responsibility? What does it mean that within the context of my responsibility, I should see to it that work should be done as opposed to me doing work? That work, anything that's not part of serving Hashem, anything that's not sacred activity, which is generalized as being what we're involved in 6 days. So 6 days we go to work, 6 days we're involved in our career, in our worldly pursuits, let's call them, and then on Shabbos we're involved, there's more time for davening, more time for learning, more focus on spirituality and service of Hashem, etc. Now obviously that we serve Hashem during the week, but Shabbos is a day when there's much more focus on that. So the things that we're involved in the 6 days of the week, so when it comes to the kind of things that we're primarily involved in during the 6 days of the week, as opposed to Shabbos, i.e. primarily, generally speaking, material pursuits, we should approach those in a manner of the work being done as opposed to us doing the work. And let's get into it. We're going to go and get into it in more detail inside the text. Kafisha Nemar, as it says. So this is a verse in Tehillim. It says, Yegia kapecha ki soichal ashrecha v'toivlach. Yegia kapecha, the toil of your hands, ki soichal, when you will consume it, i.e. when you will work, generate income, and live based off of that income. Ashrecha, you will be fortunate, v'toivlach, and it will be good for you. Upirish hadvarim hu, what does it mean? Sheyegiyasa shaladam tzarech l'shem tzarchav hagufnim, toichal tzricha liyas rak b'yodayim. Why I say the toil of your hands? Not all work is done with hands, and I guess Once upon a time, perhaps the question may have seemed not quite as strong, because work primarily, I guess, was mostly labor and agriculture. But not all work, and especially today, more than ever, work is less and less physical labor and more things that we're doing with our minds, etc. But there was always this element within work. Work wasn't just hands. Work was hands, work was feet, work was mind. And even when you are working with your hands, that involves your whole body and it involves your mind. You have to think about what you're doing. You have to be invested with your mind in what you're doing. So why does it say the toil of your hands? It could have just simply said, Yegiacha, your toil. Ki seichel, when you will consume the fruits of your labor, of your toil. Why does it say the toil of your hands? And the reason is because, so we're talking here about work in the pursuit of material needs or material wants, which is why it says ki sochal, when you will eat them, when you will consume them. So it's work which is done in the pursuit of material, let's say, most literally consumer goods. But it doesn't only have to be that. But generally speaking, it's talking about the pursuit of material acquisitions, let's call it, property, experiences, etc. These sort of things should be done primarily with our hands. The mind and the heart should be invested in Torah and mitzvahs, in that which is sacred, even during the week. And this is what the verse is telling us. When you will consume that which you have generated through your material pursuits, which you did with your hands, not by investing your heart and soul into it, because your heart and soul are invested in Torah and in mitzvahs. The pursuit of material things you did in a more external way, in a more superficial way, not by investing your heart and soul. Then when it's Yegiah Kapecha, when it's the toil of your hands as opposed to the toil of your heart and soul, then Ashrecha v'toilach, you will be fortunate, and that which you consume as a result will be good for you. Behesem l'Maimar Hazal, and this aligns with the Maimar Hazal, that which Chazal with the sages say, because we have here, it says twice, it says when you will consume the outcome or the fruits of the toil of your hands, Ashrecha, you will be fortunate, v'toilach, and it will be good for you. Why does it say twice? Just say you will be fortunate, or it will be good for you. If it says you will be fortunate and it will be good for you, it must be saying two things. What are those two things? Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, you will be fortunate in this world. V'tovlach ba'olam haba, and it will also be good for you in the world to come. So it tells us that the benefits that we get as a result of making sure that we pursue material, let's call it wealth, for the sake of simplicity, with our hands as opposed to with our heart and soul, the benefits of that will be experienced both in this life, in the physical world, as well in the experience of the soul in the world to come. Zukam kavanas te'aset zeruya. This is also what it's the idea that's being communicated in that verse when it says the toil of your hands you will consume when you consume. So when you consume the toil of your hands, as opposed to your heart and soul, you will be fortunate and it will be good for you. The same idea is what it's telling us here. Zukam kavanas te'aset zeruya. It says your work will be done. Derech agav. It will happen sort of automatically. It doesn't mean that you're not going to do it, but it means you're going to do it in a more external and superficial way rather than investing your heart and soul into it. It will be as if it sort of happens to you rather than you being really invested in it. The person's not invested with his heart and soul, with his mind and his heart, but with his ability to actually do things, with his koyach hasiyah, this ability to do, the power of action. And even when a person is being involved actively, even if it's being limited to a sort of physical involvement and not a mental and emotional investment, even then, it's only done to the extent that it needs to be done to facilitate the blessing of Hashem. What do we mean by that? The truth is, everything we have comes from Hashem. Now that doesn't mean that we don't have to bother trying, we don't have to work, and we don't have to pursue that which we need. We do. But what we get comes from the blessing Hashem gives, and the actions that we take create a scenario in which Hashem's blessing is now able to take effect. Because a person can do everything right and just have bad luck and just not succeed. And sometimes a person can put in minimal effort and really not try that hard and have incredible success. So, to a degree, obviously, success is going to be proportional generally to effort. But it's not like, this will vary. For a given person, first of all, you will tend to have more success when you put in more effort. And there's a lot of variation from person to person in terms of how much one person will succeed per amount of effort they put in than the next person. A big part of that is Hashem's plans, different plans for those two different people. And even for a given person, it'll vary from day to day, it'll vary from month to month, etc. So, and the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, gave an analogy for this, and he said that when you want to grow crops, right, the majority of income for the entirety of humanity, for the majority of human existence, was agriculture. So, if you want to grow crops, you've got to plow the land, you've got to sow the seeds, you've got to dig up the ground, you've got to put the seeds in, you've got to do everything you've got to do on the right schedule, put in very, very hard work. But if you put in all that work and there's a drought and there's zero rain, you're going to have nothing. You can have done all the work and have nothing to show for it at the end of the day. If, on the other hand, you have a good season and there's perfect amount of rain on each day of the year, exactly the perfect ideal amount of rain for agricultural success, but if you didn't dig up the ground and put the seeds in, you're also going to have no crops. In order to have a healthy crop, you have to do the work, you have to plow the ground and put in the seeds into the ground and plant. And you need to have the rain in the right amounts at the right time, and then you get crops. So there has to be this element of investment of effort that we put in, and there has to be blessing from above, which is what the rain is a metaphor for, that which comes from above, which then allows the work we've done to be effective and successful. And this is a metaphor for everything we do in life. Whenever we're pursuing something, we need to put in effort, because God doesn't generally just give things to people without putting in effort. At the end of the day, it's God's blessing which gives us what we have, but it's our responsibility to create, and the term that's used here is kli, a utensil or an accessory, something that God is going to, so to speak, use as a vehicle by means of which He is going to give us that blessing. Now, if I look at things with that perspective, and I go to work and I do my thing, but I'm consciously aware and I have clarity in the fact that the work that I'm doing is the creation of a vehicle by means of which God will then give me blessing, as opposed to seeing it as I'm generating wealth, it changes things drastically. If I look at it as my actions are creating wealth, then the degree to which I'm interested in wealth is going to dictate the degree to which I'm going to be putting in time. And if I really, really want a lot of wealth, and I believe that my actions are directly generating wealth, I'm going to put in every spare second, and I might allow work to start to creep in and to steal time away from davening, from praying, and pray a little bit less so I have more time to work. And I might start to study Torah a little bit less and to allow my work to steal time from there. And I might allow work to steal time from spending time with my family and doing all sorts of other important things. So when I look at it as my work is generating my wealth, it makes sense. Now, it doesn't necessarily make sense that I should put the pursuit of wealth above other priorities, but it does make sense that if I do have that order of priorities, I'm going to allow work to steal time from all the other areas of my life. However, if I look at work as a vehicle by means of which God gives me blessing, and I have a very clear conscious awareness of the fact that the true factor that determines how much success I have is God's blessing, and that it is just my responsibility to work and to create a vehicle for that blessing, it now makes zero sense, no matter how important wealth is to me, it makes zero sense for me to steal time from davening to work more and to steal time from Torah study to work more, if the prayer and the Torah study are things that strengthen my connection to the Creator, and I'm aware of the fact that my wealth is going to be determined by the Creator's interest in giving me blessing through that vehicle which is my work, it's, I guess, no, leave it. I was just going to take another analogy, but I don't think it's important. I don't think we have time. So, as long as, if I look at the vehicle as being of primary importance, maybe I will do the analogy quickly. Take a car, for example. Cars mean different things to different people. You have people who want their car to be comfortable, which means they're going to want to have nice, comfortable seats. They're going to want to have good heating and good air conditioning and good suspension that makes the ride smooth and comfortable, etc., etc., etc. And that makes a lot of sense. Then you have someone who wants a car to be a sports accessory. They want that car to drive as quickly as possible. That person doesn't care how comfortable the seats are. That person who wants the car to drive as quickly as possible is going to focus priority number one on the engine. The person who wants that car to be comfortable, you think they even notice that there's an engine in the car? Probably don't even notice or think about the fact that there's an engine in that car. Obviously, the car's not going to work without an engine, but they don't really think about it. They're thinking about the seats and the air conditioning. Someone who's a rev head and wants their car to drive quickly, the thing they think about the most is the engine, an engine that's bigger and more powerful, has more horsepower. If they're really extreme, they may take out most of the seats so that the car is lighter and can drive faster, and the one seat that they do have is not going to be plush and soft and comfortable because that makes the seat heavier, which makes the car heavier, which makes it drive more slowly, or which makes it not accelerate as quickly. They might take out the air conditioning because the air conditioning system makes the car heavier, etc., etc., etc. So, or even just focusing on the engine itself. You have a person who just wants the car ride to be comfortable. They never think about the engine, very possibly. They think about the seats and the air conditioning, the climate control. The person who wants the car to be fast doesn't care about the seats. They care about the engine, and that's what they're thinking about. And the person who wants the car to be comfortable, if they have more money to invest in their car, they're going to get more comfortable seats. The person who wants the car to go more quickly when they have, or person who thinks about the mechanics of the car, when they have more money, they're going to invest in upgrading the engine or the transmission. So if the question is here, the car itself really is a vehicle for the engine to do its job. The engine is the source of the power here. It's the source of the movement. The engine's generating all the power. The car is a framework by means of which the engine can actually take you from point A to point B. Now, an engine without a car isn't taking you anywhere. A car without an engine isn't taking you anywhere. So work without a blessing isn't going to provide any income, and blessing without work technically could, but generally doesn't, because the way it works is that the Creator waits for us to create a vehicle, a job, some sort of natural pursuit of income, by means of which the engine, the blessing, will then generate the income. Now, if we're missing the point and we forget about the engine, now come back to the car. Imagine that someone invests money in their car because they want it to be faster, but what they're investing in is the seats and the climate control, and then they wonder, well, I invested in the car, why isn't it going more quickly? Because you invested in seats and climate control, not in the engine. How do you expect an investment in climate control and seats to make the car go faster? You want the car to go faster, invest in the engine. So if we look at work as being the source of the income, and we put all of our time and effort and energy into the work, and neglect to invest in the engine, the blessing that's actually generating the income through the work, which is the vehicle by means of which it gives us the income, that's not a very good strategy to get more income. Because investing in the seats and the climate control don't make the car faster, investing in the engine does. If we invest in our relationship with the Creator, we invest in our prayer, we invest in our Torah study, we invest in our charity, we invest in our being a better person, being a kinder person. And charity doesn't only mean money. Charity means righteousness and giving to people, and sometimes the most important forms of charity could be emotional, for example. I think that's true today more than ever. Not that financial charity is not important, but that emotional charity is more and more important. When we focus on those things, what we're doing is investing in the engine. Investing in the engine makes the car go faster. Investing in our connection to the Creator by means of which we actually get the blessing, by means of which the blessing then gets invested into the vehicle, the engine. We invest in building a stronger engine in the car. We invest in strengthening the blessing from God, which is the source of the income. That is a much better investment in terms of having more at the end of the day. But that depends on having clarity in the fact that the income comes from the Creator and that work is a vehicle, as opposed to looking at work as being the source of the income. Now, bringing this back to what we're talking about in terms of this week's Torah portion, I'm going to continue outside because there's no way we're going to get even close to finished inside, and it's going to be a struggle even outside. If we have this clarity and we look at work as being a vehicle and the blessing, the connection to the Creator being the true source of income, then, and this comes back again to if you have someone who's a real revhead and wants the car to go as quickly as possible, they have zero interest in the comfort level of that car. If more comfortable seats makes the car go more slowly, take them out. I don't care. I have zero interest in how comfortable the car is. I have zero interest in how pretty the car is. And anything that makes the car more pretty or more comfortable and takes away from performance, get rid of it. I want a big, strong engine, and I want the lightest, leanest car, and if it's uncomfortable, I don't care. If it's ugly, I don't care. I want it to be fast. I want it to be effective. If I want my work to be maximally effective in terms of generating income, I'm going to want it to detract from the source of blessing as minimally as possible. If I want my car to be a high-performance vehicle, I want the actual car to be designed in a way that it has the minimum possible detraction, that it detracts from the performance of the engine as minimally as possible. And if that's at the cost of the comfort and appearance of the car, so be it. If I understand that my income comes from the blessing of God, and that the work is the vehicle by means of which it does that, I am going to want my vehicle to detract from the blessing as minimally as possible. I am going to want to be mentally and emotionally invested in Torah, in mitzvahs, in divinity, in holy things, in sacred pursuits, as much as possible, and to ensure that my work doesn't detract from that. And the more I'm mentally and emotionally invested in work, the less mentally and emotionally I'm invested in spiritual pursuits. It's just the way it is. We have so much mental and spiritual energy and focus, mental and emotional energy and focus, and the more that's invested in work, the less it's invested in spirituality, which is the source of blessing. The more we put into the car, the less quickly the engine's going to drive. The less quickly the engine will be able to drive the car, because the heavier it becomes. It takes away, by definition. Putting more into the car takes away from its performance. Putting more than necessary mental and emotional energy into work takes away from its performance, because that takes away from the blessing. It takes away from the investment in spirituality. It takes away from the engine. Now, just to be very, very clear, and this is super important, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your job well. And it doesn't mean that if you get paid to do something that you have to put your mind into to do it effectively, that you shouldn't do that. Accepting a job which the job description requires you to be involved mentally, and you choose not to be mentally involved and to therefore perform at a level that's less than what you could and should, is called stealing. That's not what's being recommended here. If you've got to do a job and you've got to invest yourself mentally, you do. And if you have to invest yourself emotionally, then you do. But you never ever want to do that more than necessary. And even when you do have to invest, and probably generally speaking it's your mind more than your emotions, unless it's work between people, therapy, helping, things like that.
You're saying like when you go to work and you're not mentally there at your job, then like at the end of the day, like when you get paid, it's like stealing.
If it depends. If you stuff envelopes for a living, you can daydream about whatever you like. It's not going to be stealing. But if you have a job that requires you to be present and you're not present and your performance is subpar, that's stealing. You got paid for something and you didn't do it.
Right.
So that's not what's being recommended here. But what's being recommended here is that when you close your eyes at night, you're not thinking about work. You haven't invested your heart and soul in work. The thing that you think about when you close your mind is your purpose, why you're here, bringing divinity into the world, making the world a better place, making the world a brighter and warmer place with godliness and spirituality. That's what you think about when you close your eyes at night, and that's what you think about when you open your eyes in the morning. When you go to work, if you need to be invested, you be invested. You can be invested mentally, and if you need to be invested emotionally, you can do that too, but you don't invest your heart and soul into the material pursuit of your work. Because number one, that's not the most effective way to generate income. The most effective way to generate income is to put your investment into the engine. The best way to make your car faster is to invest less in the comfort of the car and more in the engine. The best way to make your work high performance and most effective, even from a material perspective at generating income, is to put less investment of heart and soul into your work and more investment of heart and soul into your spiritual pursuits. You should be thinking about davening, or you should be struggling not to think about your davening and your learning, your Torah study while you're at work, rather than struggling not to think about work while you're studying Torah and praying. Now, you should be thinking about each one when you're doing it. Unless, like I said, if you have a job that requires zero mental engagement, you can think about what you want, and that's fine. But and this is the instruction that this verse is telling us. It's not telling us to observe the halachas of Shabbos. We've been told that already. But let's read it again now with this sense with this perspective. Vayakhel Moshe es kol hadas bnei Yisrael. Moshe gathered all the Jewish people together. Vayomer aleim, he said to them, Eila hadvarim asher tzivah Hashem la'asos osam. These are the things Hashem has commanded you to do. Sheishes yomim, and this is the instruction. Sheishes yomim tei oseh melacha. Hashem's not telling us to keep Shabbos. Hashem is telling us step number one. For 6 days, it doesn't say do work. For 6 days, work shall be done. It should be done automatically. Your work should be happening to you. To whatever degree that can happen without you stealing from your employer. But you should be investing your heart and soul as minimally as possible. You shouldn't be invested in the work. You've got to do the work, but the work should be kind of just happening to you. You go to work, the work sort of happens, and then, but what's the thing that has the attention of your mind, of your heart, of your soul? Spirituality, divinity, illuminating the world with godliness. Those are the things that should be on your mind. Those are the things that should have the attention of your heart and soul. And that's why it says Shabbos twice, which was another question. It's telling you. And then it says, Sheishis yomim teyosem malacha uvayom hashvi yilachem kodesh. On the seventh day it will be holy for you, Shabbos Shabbosin. Not just Shabbos, but Shabbos Shabbosin. You want it to be a real, legit rest, a double Shabbos. Because you can think about vacation, right? There's vacation, and then there's vacation. You can be on the beach, sipping a pina colada and thinking about work. or you can be on the beach really, really relaxing. Now, if all you ever think about is work and work consumes your heart and soul, what makes you think that just because you are now sitting on a beach chair on the beach instead of your office desk behind your computer, that all of a sudden, for the first time in your life, you're going to be able to just completely switch off and just focus on something else when the only thing your mind has focused on for years is work? It's not happening. It's a nice dream, but it's not going to happen. You're going to be sitting on that chair, on that beach, and you're going to be thinking about work. Fact. Period. If, however, for 6 days the work gets done, you think about your work as much as you need to do it properly, but it's not consuming the attention of your heart and soul. It's not what you think about when you close your eyes. If when you close your eyes at night you're not thinking about work, then when you're sitting on the beach you're also going to be able to not think about work. So if for 6 days the work gets done, you're there, but it sort of just happens to you, rather than you being invested emotionally with your heart and soul, then when Shabbos comes, you know what? You're going to have a real Shabbos. It's going to be Shabbos Shabboson, Shabbos of Shabbosim. It's going to be a real, successful, effective day off. You're really going to rest. If 6 days, all you think about is work, and you're obsessed with work, when Shabbos comes, you're still going to be obsessed with work. You won't be able to do it, but try as you might, you're not going to get it off your mind. So that's why it says Shabbos twice. Moshe, you had a question?
So Sicha says that, says that you're not supposed to be super involved in your work, that it's got to be like, how to say, daseh. And what if your work, you're a melamed, or you're a teacher, or you're like a...
Well, that's different, because then your work is spiritual in nature. Your work is sacred. So you're not... So if you teach Torah, for example, or if you help people, if you're a therapist, you help people, then you're not investing yourself in the pursuit of wealth. You're investing yourself in teaching. You're investing yourself in helping someone. Which, for you, if this is your profession, also happens to be your source of income. Right? But if you have a business that doesn't have any sort of intrinsic moral motive, and the motive of the business is to generate income, when you're focusing on the details of your business, you're thinking about money. Does that answer the question?
So if your work is holy, then
you should be. If you teach Torah, you should be. Actually, it says in Shulchan Aruch that if you teach Torah and you're up late at night and you're tired and you can't teach properly, that's an avera. If you teach Torah, you are obligated to make sure that you get to bed early enough to be able to teach properly. Why? Because you're not investing yourself in the pursuit of income, of wealth. You're investing yourself in teaching Torah. It's very different.
Okay, so when someone invests their heart and soul in their work for 6 days, and then Shabbat comes along, they're going to be still in that, like, they're still going to be
in that mental space, for sure. I mean, that's just a natural phenomenon.
Right. So, but if you don't invest your, like, spiritually and emotionally into the work, then when Shabbat comes around, you'll be able to, like, let it go and
to experience Shabbos fully.
Yeah.
The same way that when you go home to eat dinner, you're going to be able to be fully present. You're going to be able to be fully present with your spouse, as opposed to like them sitting and talking and you don't even hear because you're busy thinking about work. In which case you get in very big trouble very quickly. Right, that's exactly the idea. This is not even a spiritual thing. This is just a very simple physical phenomenon. If you're obsessed with work and if it's what you think about when you come home and what you think about when you close your eyes to go to sleep at night, it's going to be what you think about on Shabbos. It's very simple. Now, it's not like the key to not thinking about it on Shabbos is to not think about it when you close your eyes. I close my eyes, don't think about work, don't think about work. It's about approaching work in a way that it doesn't consume you, so that when you step out the door and you go home, you're present at home. When you go to bed at night, you're present in bed. And when you wake up, you're present in waking up. And when it's Shabbos, you're present in Shabbos.
But a person's surroundings affects them, and let's say
they daven in the morning, they're learning chidas, let's say, but they still have to go to work, and that's the majority of their day, and that's the majority of their headspace. So it's not like we're, we can't just turn off a switch. So if we come home and we're thinking about whatever we did that day, like, how do you suggest us, like...
Well, the reality of it is obviously that it's a challenge. It's not just like you can flick a switch. I would say that the practical approach to doing this is, number one, having that clarity that work is a vehicle, so I don't get obsessed with it. And also, what are my priorities? If I have clarity in the fact that the work is a vehicle as opposed to being the engine for my income, and I have clarity in my priorities, and those priorities list spirituality, Torah, mitzvahs above income, and that the reason I want to have a healthy income is to be able to have a Torah, mitzvahs life properly, then automatically I'm going to be less obsessed with work. And it's going to be a work in progress for the duration of our life. That's the reality of it, right? It's not just like this is an instruction, flick that switch and boom. This is a life work. But the key to it is the priority and the clarity. And if we have that clarity in the fact that the work is the vehicle and not the engine, and clarity in our priorities, then we are naturally going to be less obsessed with work. And we'll have to remind ourselves, etc., etc. And even think about it, if you start your day with davening and chitas, you're going to have a very different day at work, as opposed to waking up and going straight to work.
But is this something that we should keep, keeping within us? Let's say you go to an office and, you don't want to express that the work's not as important to you as other things in your life. So it's kind of in your own psyche, but not expressed to others.
You mean, do you mean let's say in a very competitive and professional environment where you don't want people to think that you're not obsessed with work? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, what if everybody else is obsessed with work? And
it's their problem.
But I'm saying,
No, I want to try to answer the question. It's this kind. When it comes to the reality of it, it's going to be nuanced, and it's going to be an ongoing, work in progress, an ongoing work on maintaining the balance. And again, we've got to do what we've got to do work properly. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your work effectively and maximally. It's talking more in terms of our priorities, and therefore our deep emotional investment in and obsession with the work. You can be laser focused on your work at work, and you should be. When you're at work, you should be present at work. But it doesn't mean that work has now become your God. That's the difference. You understand that I'm at work and I'm laser focused on work 100%, because this is what I'm doing right now and this is what I'm supposed to be invested in. I'm supposed to be right now invested in creating the vehicle for the blessing, for the income. If that's the way you look at it, I'm here and I'm laser focused, but what am I laser focused on? Not generating income, I'm laser focused on creating that vehicle because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's already going to change things dramatically. Now, it doesn't mean that if I learn that and I say it to myself, boom. But it does mean that if we can work on developing that conscious awareness and focus, and that's a life's work just to develop that awareness on an ongoing basis in a real way. But as that, we can make progress in a very real way, relatively quickly. There'll always be further to go. But as we develop that conscious awareness and focus and perspective, the rest will follow. It doesn't mean we won't be as focused at work, but it will mean that we'll be less obsessed with the work. And we'll be able to walk away and switch off and go home and be free of the work. That make sense? Was that answer to the question? Yeah? Okay.